capable of achieving. And it is not a good idea to have that CEO or the chairperson who may be a parent or a sibling, absolutely not a sibling, leading that conversation. We need to have them there in a more quiet, withdrawn capacity. All too often, when I speak to key managers or I speak to their children, they say, well, we're waiting for mom to make a decision. We're waiting for dad to make a decision. Good God, if we wait for them to make a decision, no decision will be made. They'll be dead before a decision is made. They're not good at it, and they don't want to. I don't blame them. It's fun. It's fun being in charge. It has its perks, And everybody looks at you like you're Zeus, right? And, you're like a god, and that's kind of fun, and you don't want to walk away from that. I get it, but we do need to give either the heirs or the management team some clarity and an opportunity to voice what's possible.
And also to clarify, add on what Drew just said, is when that succession planning happens, if there's not a clear leader out of that family, management by committee doesn't necessarily work.
That's right.
Same what he was kind of talking about. No one wants to make a decision, or three people want to make different decisions. If there's not a true leader that comes out of it, it may not be a CEO, but there has to be a leader of the organization. That's kind of the small company in Wichita. It's kind of what happened. There was 4 siblings. They all have equal votes. Nothing gets decided. So it just kind of.
And
flowers.
imagine if there is strategy, right? If we're clear on what the vision is, then leadership becomes self-evident. It's easy to see that, Beth or that Harry should be the next leader because they're the ones who have the skill set to do that kind of stuff. They're the only ones who've ever been to China, or they're the only ones who've ever done an acquisition, or they're the only, as opposed to, again, leadership by committee, and let's not upset the apple cart.
Any thoughts on the topic?
Well, a lot of times in family businesses, it's managed by emotion. And, you tend to, when everyone sits down, there's an emotion, the emotions are there up front first. And bringing in somebody outside, whoever that may be, tends to help make those decisions based on the facts and not so much on the emotional drive of what the family members of all the brothers and sisters sitting down that are, some may want to keep the legacy going and want to keep the family business going for another 50 years, and yes, we can do this, or, maybe the right thing is to align the company to sell it, and, it's about looking at the facts and bringing in somebody to help them do that is better than having the family sit there and who have equal thoughts and fighting it out for whatever emotional reasons that they're thinking. They may not be looking at the bottom line and seeing number one, the growth of what the company can possibly do or will do or has done. It's all about, well, our family name has to continue on and we need to do it this way.
To Gina's point, the siblings have an uncanny ability to push one another's hot buttons. They install those hot buttons, that's why. And, to have the three of us, to have me and my sister and brother sit down and talk about, who should be in charge, don't do it. It's dangerous, it's not a good idea. But to have someone who can facilitate that process, who has the charisma and the skill set to get Patrick to take a deep breath and to be quiet while Gina's speaking, that's important. It's a really important, and it's valuable. It's worth every penny you pay for it, because it is tough to do.
Yeah, the last decision you want made are at the casket and the deathbed. Those are the worst times the hot buttons come out. So often people wait till that time frame to make those decisions. They go forward. So one of the things that tomorrow I start an entrepreneur class that I'm teaching, and one of the things I talk in my entrepreneur class always about is exit strategies. And I think that I would hope that Ben would agree, but if you don't, please let me know. Exit strategies also mean succession planning. And you don't always have to wait till you're a successful company and you're ready to get to the next year, the next maturity, the next level to make that decision. I think you need to start thinking about it early on in the company's progress as you move forward. And so,
Could you just say, you said exit strategies,
Yes.
right? Some of us back here thought we heard sex and strategy.
exit strategy.
That's when the boss runs off with the secretary.
I see. Thanks, Dan. Next thing you'll be bringing up my 3 marriages. So, as we talk about exit strategy, going through that, starting early on in the process of company ownership and to go through that. So you may disagree, Drew. I see it on your face already. And you're allowed to.
I guess
You already fired me once,
you know,
fired me twice.
I hope no one came today expecting to hear hard and fast rules. You know, this is transition planning, continuity planning, strategy. You know, that's why there are consultants that do this stuff, because consultants love to say, it depends. And it does. It depends. You know, sure, it's great to have an exit, but if I'm 28 years old and I'm still single, I have no idea, you know, whether my children will ever want to come into this enterprise, and, you know, what are the pros and cons of keeping it. But to be able to think that, you know, we need to do some scenario planning and think about, okay, what if I come down with cancer? What if I need to sell in a hurry? How would I unload it? Or, you know, what if I want to keep it, right? For what purpose and to what end? But nevertheless, by the time one is 55, 58 years old, boy, you really need to be clear on what you intend to do.
Gene and Patrick, any thoughts on that? When to start this? When to start the succession planning? When to start?
Well, I believe that any individual that wants to start a business has to really think about why are they starting this business? You know, is it because they're just knowledgeable and they want to start this, you know, they're excellent at, you know, making a certain product, you know, maybe it's the vegetable-based stuff like you were talking about and their focus is that, or is it because they're creating a job for themselves? Or is it because they want to grow the company X, Y, and take a lot of money out every year? Or is it because they want to, you know, sell it or go on vacations or yada, yada? I think that really the exit strategy should really begin with the individual who's entering in the business, not so much of what is going to happen if I have 5 children and who's going to take it over, but what do I want out of this company? Why am I doing this? Why am I going to work, you know, 100 hours a week or, you know, 7 days a week or drive myself to do this? What do I really want out of it? And then with that becomes some form of a strategy of where you want the company to go, and it might be, you know, part of that exit strategy. And then, like you said previously, it is a living, breathing document, you know, if you want to call it that, and you keep making changes as you go, you know. Maybe you acquire a wife or a husband and children, and then it'll change. But I believe you do have to kind of go into any type of business with what am I going to get out? What am I doing this for?
Yeah, you start building that legacy early on, and that legacy then will go on with your decisions down the road.
And I don't think most people would call it an exit strategy, but they call it a business plan. Why are we running this business? What are we going to do with this business? And it's just a natural part of, you know, every banker going to want to see that plan. Because you'll make different decisions with your capital if you're planning to exit in 5 years or you're exiting in 20 years. And so if you think of it as an exit plan, you're already planning on what you're going to do with your capital. You're going to save capital, you're going to invest. And those are very big decisions. So your business plan, which is an ongoing, updated thing, every time you go to the banker, he's going to want to see your business plan again as well. But even to run your own company, why are you running this company? What are you going to do with it? Is it going to be handed down? Do you plan on doing that? Or is it going to be ran by somebody else, sold? But all those things change how you invest your money, how you spend your money, and how you invest in people. And so whether it's you call it an exit strategy or business plan or whatever, it's something that's required for a business to be successful.
There's also as I mentioned earlier, there's a normalcy and a predictability to it all. Let's just, you know, 3 unrelated people, you know, we start a company, manufacturing, right? And there's, you know, admin, sales, and production. And we were friends before. Maybe 2 of us work together. And we start this business and we agree that we'll each own a third, right? And we'll each be paid the same. And we start this enterprise up. We don't have the time, as you mentioned earlier, to think about taking a day or 2 days off for an offsite to do this sort of planning work. It just rarely happens. We're in go-go mode, right? It's opportunistic. We grab every berry and apple we can off the tree, all the low-hanging fruit, and we are in go mode. You know, and it's weekends, and it's holidays, and it's nights. I think that all of this work, it requires two things. I think it requires a degree of discipline, right? That one or more of us have the discipline to say we need to stop and breathe and take a look at where we're headed. But I think it also requires, on the part of our advisors, whether it is our banker, as you said, you know, what are you doing this, or our corporate counsel, or our accountant, but you know, those are typically the closest gatekeepers, and usually not a banker if it's privately held. But you know, that lawyer or accountant, someone needs to be helping them and stepping up and helping them to see the importance of having these conversations. Because we're probably not going to think about it. It's not what gives us, it's not what gets our juices flowing. It's not what we enjoy doing.
It's not sexy.
It's not, and it's
Not-
not fun. I mean,
Not-
you know,
not sexy,
closing a
not
deal
fun.
is
No,
fun.
not-
You know,
yeah.
building a better mousetrap is fun. That's the fun stuff.
Right.
I think along with that thought, and going back to a point you just brought up a few minutes ago, Patrick, when you have bankers, when you have people involved that aren't directly family members, and they're also part of the stakeholder community that you have to work with. And so how do you bring the bankers, or did your companies bring the bankers in? And should you bring the bankers into your succession planning so that they know that you've got a continuity plan, that you're going to be there down the road, especially if they're heavily involved with financing, if they're heavily involved with making sure that the money's down there for you to use as you need to have it, and that you don't interrupt some tremendous banking relationships you built over the years.
I mean, if you're borrowing millions of dollars to invest in capital or new building or equipment or whatever, the banker wants to know insurance plans on the key people. They want to know who's going to take over if someone gets hit by a bus. They want to know how they're going to get their money back. All they care about is how they get their money back. So they want to make sure what your cash flow looks like when someone gets ran over or whatever it is. So, you know, while they're not a great stakeholder because they're only interested in their own stake, getting their money back, they will require you to put those pieces in place, even superficially, to get the money, whether it's an actual document versus a real plan or just something written on paper. And Drew said that earlier, you know, when I wrote down, because I liked it, words and actions mean a whole lot more than, you know, a document. For the banker, it's a document, but what's your real plan if something does happen? Because a lot of families, I mean, we have a duty to our community, to our workers, to our employees, to our own families, that this company is successful and goes on, unless there's an exit strategy to get out of it. But we have a fiduciary duty to each other to take care of these things, and if you don't plan for it, who knows what's going to happen? And you know, in the case where it's actually a family friend that the company is failing, those family members don't really know what they're going to do in a year. None of them have ever worked before. They don't have the experience to go out and get jobs. It's impacting 4 or 5, 6 families within the next year. It's going to be a major impact to their way of life.
Sometimes it's somewhat of a curse to grow up in a family as maybe a second generation or third generation coming up. When the first generation has developed the company, the family members coming up, it's if they've only worked at the family business, it's all that they know. And sometimes a lot of times it's more of it's a detriment to them because they haven't gone out and experienced other businesses